young people are so concerned about. The Violence Against Women Act won't even get a vote. Lowering health care and prescription drug pricing won't even get a vote. That's what he said about our agenda, which encompasses most of our early legislation on what we promised for the people, to lower the cost of health care by lowering the cost of prescription drugs, by building the infrastructure of America in a green way, and in doing so, increasing paychecks, lower health care, bigger paychecks, cleaner government. Not even going to get a vote. Again, public sentiment is everything. President Lincoln, the Senate will certainly be hearing from the public on issues, values really, that have bipartisan support across America. This was our attempt to find our common ground. So many of these issues, whether it's gun safety or violence against women, and the rest rank very high across the board, across party lines. Right now, I'm very proud that on the floor of the House, as a former appropriator, the Appropriations Committee is putting forth legislation that reflects our values to meet the needs of the American people. Already, we've addressed issues like raising the funding for the National Institutes of Health, investing further in early childhood education. We are talking about, and that's in Rosa DeLauro's bill, Health and Human Services and Education and Labor legislation. We heard from Mr. Visklosky on the defense bill. So we're talking about a strong America, strong in our national security, our national defense, and strong in the health and education and well-being of the American people. I would love just to read to you all the provisions of the legislation, but they're there for you to see, and we'll be talking about them, enlarging those issues as to what they mean to the American people. So that is part of our investigate, litigate agenda. We're doing this, and at the same time, we are honoring our oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. Yesterday, the President gave us once again evidence that he does not know right from wrong. It's a very sad thing that he does not know right from wrong. I believe that he has been involved in a criminal cover-up. I've said that before, and our investigation is demonstrating that. The Mueller report showed obstruction of justice in at least 10, perhaps 11 places. But for the president to be so cavalier, to disregard, to be indifferent to law and any sense of ethics about who we are as a country, to say he would invite foreign intervention further, intelligence community with great confidence has put forth that the Russians interfered in our election. That's an assault on our democracy. An assault on our democracy. This president says it's a hoax. He takes an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, but I guess it doesn't include him in terms of being to be held accountable to obey the law. So we have a package that we're putting forth in light of the Mueller report, a package of legislation, duty report. If someone comes to you mandating that campaigns report foreign offers of assistance, it shouldn't even, it's so self-evident as a matter of ethics, but we'll have to codify it, mandating a duty to report for campaigns reporting foreign interventions in our elections, protecting our elections with paper ballot. That's our election security bill that Zoe Lofgren is working on, and she is working with the Senate, hoping to have bipartisan support in the House for our legislation to protect our electoral system. Closing foreign money loopholes, that's Mr. Sarbanes' bill post the Mueller report. And Mr. Thompson will be having a hearing in the Homeland Security Committee about preventing foreign disinformation. That is just a sample of some of the things that will be out there. I believe we're making good progress on oversight. Our chairmen are doing a great job. I'm so proud of them. The winning in the courts and winning documents from the Justice Department with the thought of contempt or following up on subpoenas. And we're going to get the truth for the American people so that they can know what the attack is on our country, what the president refused to do about it, and what he engaged in to cover up what was done. There's so many things happening. I just want to refer to one thing in Hong Kong. As many of you know, or some of you do anyway, the issue of China has been an important one for me since Tiananmen Square, even before, but in terms of public policy here in the Congress in Tiananmen Square. And on June 4th, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the massacre in Tiananmen Square. At the same time, we're observing that the Chinese government is engaged in arresting millions of Uyghurs and putting them into education camps. They're diminishing the democracy in Hong Kong, trying to really just eliminate the culture, the language, the religion in Tibet. The list goes on and on. But right now, currently, as we gather here in Hong Kong, as you know, in the last few days, hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million people gathered in the street to protest an extradition law that the Chinese government wants the Hong Kong government to pass. It's such a horribly dangerous piece of legislation. I'm very pleased to be supporting legislation that Senator Marco Rubio and Chris Smith on the Republican side, Jim McGovern and I on our side, and others are putting forth to improve and modernize the Hong Kong U.S. Relations Act, U.S.-Hong Kong Relations Act, and that I think is going to be submitted today. They're just finalizing it, perhaps being submitted today. But this is so wrong, and I do hope that the president will speak about human rights in China and freedoms in China when he talks about trade with the Chinese. I am pleased with Secretary Pompeo's statement on what's happening in China now in this regard. With that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, you always are right there, so Nancy gets it.
When it comes to this issue of opposition research, what would you do if a House Democrat accepted assistance, campaign assistance from a foreign power?
But we're saying it's against the law. It's so against any sense of decency. But let me give you an example. Perhaps you don't know this, or maybe you do, but to remind. In 2000, when the race was between Senator Gore and Governor Bush, Tom Downey, former member of Congress, close friend of Al Gore, was playing George Bush in the debate prep. And somebody threw over the transom or under the door, whatever place it came, the plans for the Bush campaign in the debates. They just got that to Tom Downey. He picked it up and sent it to the FBI. This isn't even foreign governments. That's what you do. There is a sense of decency about fruit from the forbidden tree, ill-gotten gain, about how then Governor Bush would have conducted that debate. This is so, and just by dint of your question, with all due respect, you make it sound as if it could be a common thing. It is not. And what the president said last night shows clearly, once again, over and over again, that he does not know the difference between right and wrong. And that's probably the nicest thing I can say about him. Because if he doesn't know the difference, it could explain some of his ridiculous behavior. And now to invite further involvement of foreign governments into our election. There was an assault on our democracy, an assault on our country by the Russians. That has been clearly documented by the intelligence community. And the President of the United States, instead of coming to the defense of our democracy, has said it's a hoax. This is beyond, I mean, it's really, there is no sense of what's the word I wanted to find? Any ethical sense that informs his comments and his thinking.
Madam Speaker, I want to make sure we understand what you're saying, because you're going to be pushing for legislation here. Are you saying, is it clear now whether this is illegal, whether it's wrong? Is it illegal to take this kind of information? And in addition, one of your members at least is saying that this is impeachable, this attitude by the president. Do you believe this is potentially impeachable?
There is in the law that you cannot accept contributions, and that includes in kind, from a foreign, your campaign cannot, from a foreign government. That is in the law. But if it needs more clarity, then we will go the duty to report. That's not that only you don't accept it, but you report it to the FBI, because this is, it's an invasion of our democracy. So I don't have the language right here, but there is language in the law that prohibits any contribution. And again, contribution is in-kind information or whatever that is. But we want to make sure that it has more clarity and carries a responsibility to report.
Madam Speaker, if you discovered, we're already in campaign season. If you discovered that this president in the course of the 2020 campaign accepted help from a foreign government, as he suggested that he might, would you consider that grounds to launch impeachment proceedings?
It has nothing to do with any campaign. I want you to all to understand that. As we go down this path to seek the truth for the American people and to hold the president accountable, it has nothing to do with politics or any campaigns. It has everything to do, if I may, excuse me, answer your question, it has everything to do with patriotism, not partisanship. So as we collect the facts, and it takes time because you have to do your research, make your request. If you go to court, you have to do the accommodation. You know what that is? It takes time to prove that you have tried to resolve the issue, and that takes time, and that's the path that we will be on. And it encompasses any and all of the comments that the president has made. It's all women in the front here. I'm so excited about that.
Couple of us guys here.
Why, if the president is inviting foreign interference, why is that not grounds to move towards impeachment? And what concrete steps will you take to try and prevent him from doing it?
Excuse me one sec. I didn't know I needed water, but I guess I did. Everybody in the country should be totally appalled by what the president said last night. Should be totally appalled. But he has a habit of making appalling statements. This one borders on so totally unethical that he doesn't even realize it. However, what we want to do is have a methodical approach to the path that we are on, and this will be included in that. But not any one issue is going to trigger, oh, now we'll go do this, because it's about investigating, it's about litigating, it's about getting the truth to hold everyone accountable, and no one is above the law. But I want to get back to our legislation, because that is what the American people elected us to do. They elected us for the people agenda, to increase paychecks, lower health care costs, have cleaner government. Many of these pieces of legislation are in that. What is it about Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in Congress that they do not want to respond to what is so popular across the board in our country? What is, to take it back to your question, what is it about the Republicans in Congress? How much more can they bear of the president's unethical behavior that they think that they are honoring their oath of office? And I believe these are all connected. I think it's all about money. Connect the dots in all of this. It's all about money. And look at what the president is doing in terms of Saudi Arabia and the sale of perhaps nuclear technology as well as planes, to Saudi Arabia. Follow the money. Who benefits from that? To declare a national emergency that he can bypass Congress in terms of those sales, bypass the law in terms of transferring of any nuclear technology to a country. Follow the money.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, Chan.
Thank you. Good morning. On this issue of a COLA increase, is there, number one, a problem with the idea that people come here and because the pay isn't satisfactory, they then go off Capitol Hill and go to K Street, and that entails corruption? And why is it so hard, naturally, to then take a vote on this because it's so toxic for a regular pay raise or a COLA increase? And is that appropriate at this time when people, themselves back home in the Midwest or out West need more money?
Well, it's hard at any time. It's not a pay raise, it's a COLA increase. And whether that comes to be, I don't know, it would have to be a bipartisan initiative if it were to be the case. And as you know, Mr. Hoyer feels very strongly in support of strengthening this institution, that there should be a recognition of with the COLA of the work that is done. Let me just say, listening to the members, because it's never a good time to bring up something like this, there is a sentiment in the country that Congress should not be just people who can afford to go to Congress. It should be about everybody having the opportunity. Many more women, many more people of color, and the rest. And that is where some of the unease comes from, that people say, it shouldn't be just for wealthy people. Well, it isn't just for wealthy people, but there is that impression. And there is an impression among members that it's hard to have two homes, raise a family, and all the rest. So that's part of what the discussion is. I don't see it as any, what did you say, you related to going to K Street? No, I think what I think is an issue in our country is the revolving door, largely spinning madly in the executive branch as we see it now. Look at the people in the department, the secretaries in the cabinet. They're all connected to the special interest. So many of them have left already in disgrace, dismay, or disappointment. But you see their connection, whether it's EPA, and Interior, you name the list. There's so much connection to the, when I say private sector, I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush, but to special interest, paint that in there. So this whole issue of this revolving doors is a separate issue and something that has to be looked into. But as we have inclusion, and that is an important value.
The House was until 4:01 this morning, and most people back home say, Congress doesn't get any work done, nothing happens. I know you're talking about the graveyard here, but that said, the public doesn't think that Congress gets things done. And the House was until 4 o'clock in the morning. The defense markup was quite late last night as well.
No, till 7 o'clock this morning.
But that's my point. Why does the public perceive this differently, and that's why they're opposed to a COLA increase, and members are afraid if they vote for that, they're going to get hammered?
I don't think that this is, look, we have a president who is ignoring the law, not honoring his oath of office, not honoring the office that he holds. We have a funding challenge that we have, which is something that must be done. By the end of the fiscal year, we must pass the appropriations bills. I'm an appropriator, left to our own devices, I believe, as I've said to you before, that the appropriators in a bipartisan way can reach solutions. We're still having the cap fight, the lifting of the debt ceiling. We have the president transferring nuclear technology as well as other weaponry to a country that is getting away with murder, and he chooses to ignore it, is engaged in a deadly war in Yemen, which the Congress opposes. So we have important policy matters to deal with. I think I've spent enough time on speculating as to whether there'll be something or not, which we don't know if there will be. Yes, ma'am.
On the appropriations, at the end of the month, the Office of Refugees and Resettlement says that they are going to
Yeah.
run out of money to house unaccompanied
Thank you.
migrants. The Senate is going to mark up a bill next week on this issue. How do you think that the Senate and the House can bridge the divide, given the fact that they had to drop this off of the disaster aid bill just a couple of weeks ago because they couldn't find agreement?
They're working on it. There are two paths. One is in the appropriations bill where we have the Homeland Security piece, which is part of the 2020 appropriations, and then the supplemental. We'll have to have a supplemental because of the needs are so great. But I have confidence that they will come to a conclusion on it. We have to. The humanitarian needs are very great there, and we care very much about that, and we don't want them to poison pill what we're trying to do to alleviate that humanitarian challenge. I mean, really, taking children out of the arms of their mothers, separating families. How could it be, as people of faith that believe in the spark of divinity in every person, that we're all God's children, that we could treat people the way they do? But we will have to come to an agreement to get the bill passed and signed by the
Can
president.
it be done by the end of the month?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we're on that path. Yes,
In order
ma'am.
to
Budget
enact
caps.
legislation, you're going to have to work with this president. I don't see infrastructure on your board. Going back to the infrastructure meeting a few weeks ago, looking back, was it a good idea in that moment, right before you walked in, to accuse the president of a criminal cover-up before you were trying to get a deal done for the American public?
These are bills that have passed the House.
I know.
These are bills that have
Yeah.
passed the House. We are not giving up on infrastructure. And I say almost every day that the president is involved in a criminal cover-up. He just chose to pick it up that day. So there was nothing new about anything I said about the president at that time. I think the president just didn't want to pay for it. The purpose of that meeting was, we're going to do infrastructure, build the infrastructure of our country, which I truly believe he wants to do. Build the infrastructure of our country in a green way, I'm not sure about that, to raise the paychecks of the American worker. And to do so in a way, infrastructure is a national security issue, as President Eisenhower so beautifully demonstrated in the 50s when he instituted the interstate highway system as a national security issue to unify America. So I don't take any responsibility for the president's behavior, except to say that we're going to hold him accountable for it.
Budget caps question?
Yes, sir, please.
I understand the White House is floating some new offer to Democrats. They were going to review it. Have you seen that? Have you any comment on how
I
the
don't know
talks
what
are
that
going?
is. What are you referencing?
Apparently Mnuchin was in with McConnell making offers last night and wanting to run something by you. So that's
I don't know what it is, so I can't tell you if I do, but I'll tell you where I see things. We do have to lift the budget caps, and we have to avoid sequestration, because that's not a good idea for our country. We have to avoid shutdown of government, which is palatable to some Republicans who don't believe in governance, but we will not go down that path. And we're going to combine, when we lift the caps, then we can talk about lifting the debt ceiling. But that would have to come second or simultaneous, but not before lifting the caps. I don't know what their proposal is, but I do know that we've been engaged in conversation, Mitch and Leader McConnell and Leader Schumer and Mr. McCarthy and I, with the Secretary of the Treasury. We were making some progress, but then they kind of backed away from it. So we'll see. I don't know what that one is. I'm not usually, shall we say, when Mick Mulvaney takes the lead. Mick Mulvaney was one of the leaders in shutting down government when he was here and voted to keep it closed. And that was when we were operating on the Republican number, that we said, we'll agree to it, we don't like it, we'll agree to it, and they didn't agree to their own number. So I'm hopeful, always open, but I think left to our own devices, we can get that. I keep using that phrase because there is bipartisanship in all of this. We know what we have to do. We can get it done. It's when they come in with deal breakers because they don't believe in governance. They don't believe in science, which says evidence, data, truth, fact of what we need to do for our country. So if you don't accept that and you don't believe in governance, then you have a different approach to all this. Okay, are you ready for game time tonight? See my yellow jacket? Golden State Warriors. Game time.
Your bet with Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
I did. Made a bet with Justin Trudeau after it was 3-1. Now, I didn't want to bring it up in Normandy. That wouldn't have been appropriate. It wasn't the time or the place. But the next day, we made our bet. Can't wait to see what those goodies are from Canada.
Poutine?
Say what?
Poutine, perhaps?
Is that what they'll have?
Well,
I think that it will be, see, my advantage, apart from the Golden State Warriors, my advantage is that I'm the Speaker of the House, but my bet is from California, so walnuts and almonds and chocolate and wine. His advantage is he's the Prime Minister of Canada, so he has to have a representative supply. I don't have to do the whole country, I can just do California. So I'm eager to see what he sends. Game time.
Thank you.
Thank you.